Roy Edwards has been in the software engineer field for 20 years, helping organizations adopt modern business practices and innovate. Taking the same techniques used in software enhancements, he's now pivoted to help entrepreneurs and individuals upgrade themselves. Let's cue the intro and get right to it. I've spent the last 20 years studying, teaching, and coaching people to find their greatness and take their lives to the next level. Along the way, it's become evident that emotions are at the root of everybody's successes and failures. Worry and fear are the enemies, and it's time to forge the armor and earn the tools to overcome the two things that could single-handedly destroy your future. Hi, my name is Michael Johnson, and I'm a life coach, a peak performance trainer, and I'm the emotions guy. It's time to take back control of how you feel, control of how you act, and control of how you experience life. It's time to become a lifer, a new breed of overachiever focused on living every minute to its fullest. We are responsible for how we feel, and no one and no thing can make us feel anything. Emotional mastery is our journey, and emotional education and intelligence is the key. We are lifers, and this is Magic for Life. What's up, lifers? Michael Johnson here with the Magic for Life podcast, and I'm excited you joined me today because we've got our special guest in the house, Roy Edwards. Thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on. I'm pumped.
I'm excited,
this is exciting.
You know, we'll talk about your podcast that you had. It was a pleasure to be a guest on your podcast, but you're doing some cool things over there, and we'll get to that in a second. But I am not letting you off the hook without giving us, kind of the rundown and your backstory on how in the heck you got to this point, because you have a really cool story. So, where did this whole thing start? How did you get to this point where you're running a podcast and you're doing all these cool things?
Yeah. So it's a story I love to tell. So thanks for asking. So it all started, and I know a lot of people will say, oh, well, it all started with my upbringing, which it did, but not in the sense that my parents were some super parents or anything like that, which I love my parents and they're great. And they definitely embedded an entrepreneurial spirit in myself. And I have grandparents who are entrepreneurs, and, my wife, she has parents and grandparents that are entrepreneurs as well. So it's definitely in our blood. But for me, my upbringing, what kind of formed me and made me into who I am is at the age of 12, I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. And so at a very young age, I was kind of forced into the realities of life, where other kids were more kind of interested in what Beanie Babies they were collecting, or if their Digimon was going to die. I was more, I was getting my blood drawn, constantly once a month. I was taking, 30 some pills a day. I was having colonoscopies every so often. I was in and out of the hospital. And so that kind of instilled a mentality in me that I, at the time, hated. I absolutely hated everything that I was going through. And at a young age, I remember being in bed and praying and being, God, why is this? Why me? Why I just want to be normal? Why can't I just be normal? But as I got older, and this is something you talk about, you realize that it's not, this didn't happen against me. This didn't happen because God or some power or life or whatever it is hates me, right? This happened to me so that I could develop a superpower, as you would put it. Right. This is something that I can take and harness and bring it into the other areas of my life. And so what it gave me is a very unique perspective on life, where everything's okay. I woke up today, so I'm blessed. I have these scars to remember where I've been, but they don't define who I am.
Right.
And so that happened at a very young age. And so going through high school and going through college, I had this very lackadaisical mentality, which a lot of my athletic coaches hated, but became a power of mine that I could use, because when I get into a high stress environment, I know how to breathe, because it's nothing comparative to what I've been through. So,
right.
So, but at a young age, I knew that I wanted to not work from an office. I always wanted a non-traditional job. I saw that my dad did have the opportunity to work from home. So that kind of became something that I was always very interested in which as technology evolved and I grew up in the heart of the internet here in Northern Virginia. And I grew up with a computer in the home. And so that led me to web development and branding. And so I began developing websites and trying to brand myself as somebody or something. And I started a podcast very, very young, and eventually led me to SiriusXM, where I was a producer on what is now ESPNU. So, and I was a DJ and did all that fun stuff in the audio industry. And while doing that, I actually worked for the federal government at the same time. So I was double dipping because who doesn't like to work 7 days a week, right?
Right.
So I
I don't
was,
think you could call that double dipping.
it's not double dipping. I'll tell you what, man.
I think they were
when you
double
think of
dipping
double
you.
dipping, yeah, that's exactly what was going down. You think of double dipping, you're like, oh man, this guy must have been making a lot of money. No, I had two very low paying jobs that was stressing the hell out of me. But nonetheless, it was like a lot of really good experience. And I took the technology branding experience that I learned through building this podcast and everything that I'd gone through, because I thought radio was my life. I thought that's where I was headed. And this government job was just kind of like to hold me over until my big break. Right. But what happened was the exact opposite. Is I started getting recruited from contracting agencies and went contractor, left the government, and won a couple of awards, and had a couple people in the government, some IT people say, hey, Roy, go start your own business, man. So that's what we did. My wife and I, she was a federal employee too, who she's got a really cool story. She is as I don't want to say crazy because I'm not crazy, but she's as open-minded as I am towards the world. And she quit her job as a federal employee with the cushy health insurance when she was pregnant. So we went through a storm with it together and came out on the other side. And here I am telling my story. And that's what the podcast's all about, is just trying to help other people navigate through the storms of life and innovate themselves so that yesterday already happened, nothing you can do about it, but you can work on today to just get a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better. And you're never done, right? You're never done becoming your best self. So you have to be continuously innovating yourself.
Yeah, that's amazing. You chose the name Inovare for your podcast. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it is actually so my original name for it was Cloud Coffee and Code, which
that's nice.
Yeah, it was, yeah. And so that's what I mean, it was going to be talking about cloud computing, and we were going to drink coffee. It was going to be a morning show. And we were going to be talking about, coding. And as I started to interview more and more people, it started, and as we started getting into COVID, everybody kind of is telling similar stories, where I couldn't do what I used to do. So I had to evolve. I had to innovate. I had to change. Life gave me lemons and I had to make lemonade, type of a thing. And so very quickly I said, I don't care about tech part of it anymore. Nobody else cares about it either. They want to hear these stories of how people are weathering storms and how they're innovating and how they're building themselves out. And so we changed it to Inovare. And so what Inovare, we get it from, it's derived from the word, or we get it from the word innovation. Innovation is derived from Innovare or Inovare. And so it means to simply to change or to innovate, to make better. And so that's really everything we preach on the podcast is all about that mindset that, we use, and we so oftentimes take on the innovation mindset or the scrapper mentality, as I call it, when there's no other choice, right? I had to evolve myself and innovate myself at age 12 because I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. It wasn't because I wanted to. It was because I had to. And we bring this along with our lives, and as we get older, and we're very content to a fault in our lives. And if we could take the scrapper mentality, everything that's happened this year in 2020 and COVID, it sucks. And there are some people who are really hurting And sometimes there's nothing you can do about it, but you can sit there and soak, and you could say, this is terrible. God, why did this happen to me? You destroyed my business. What am I going to do? Or you can, and I'm not saying don't do that. It's okay to be emotional and to be vulnerable for a little bit, right? But we don't want to sit in that. And so after we have had our cry, or whatever it is that we have gone through, you pull your pants up and you say, okay, let's get it. And so if we can take that mentality to say, okay, 2020, what if 2020 just keeps happening? Then what do we do? We're just going to sit there and cry for the rest of our lives? No, we're going to figure out a way to innovate and keep pushing forward and move through the muck and the storm. And so if we can just pretend there's always a storm, there doesn't always have to be one, but if we can trick our minds to have that, there's always going to be another storm, or what happens when there might be a storm, or I'm in it right now, then we're constantly progressing at that rate and at that pace of innovation that we see during that scrapper mentality.
I love that. As you look at your podcast titles and some of the episodes that you put out, you've done a great job of
Thank you.
bringing that to the table and being able to bring those types of stories and people to your podcast, and it's really awesome. Hopefully, our listeners will go out and subscribe and listen to the great content that you're producing and putting out. Talk to me a little bit about like your ideal customer and the people that you are working with currently, and what you guys do with them.
Yeah. So our ideal customer is, well, we work with two different areas. So at Capital Presence is the name of my business. And so there's two areas that we work within. One is obviously the federal government, because that's a lot of where our background is and where we got our start. And so we work a lot with DoD, which is Department of Defense. So we have a ton of Department of Defense contracts. And so we work with the Navy, we work with the U.S. Coast Guard, the Army, we work with the U.S. Courts of America, we work with Veteran Affairs. I mean, just, DC, right? I'm a DC kid. I was born in DC, grew up here, so it's, I could bore you to death with acronyms about how much, that's DC, right? DC is an acronym. Even the place itself is an acronym. So that is one half of our target audience, right? And so the other half of it is commercial, either enterprise or startups. And so what we specialize in either space, whether it's government or commercial, is innovating technology and modernizing businesses. So we go in and we audit. We see what it is that you're doing, what technologies you're using, what software you're using, and we say, okay, you should consolidate this. You're spending too much on that. You're using Zoom, WebEx, Microsoft Teams, Skype, and all these communication tools. Why are you doing this? Consolidate this, pick one. Well, and then we define governance around it, and we streamline all this, map out some processes of how ideal scenarios of how your business should get done from start to finish. And then we work to automate it. And so we've been doing this for a very long time, right? And even before I realized what I was doing, this is something that we've been doing. Even when I was a federal employee, I wrote 400 SOPs for the Office of Generic Drugs during.
Wow.
Yeah, it was not fun. I mean, I say that now because it was like, it's an accomplishment, but I hated it, to be honest with you. It was a lot, but but I've always had that mind, that process mind, and reverse engineering. I have an engineer's mind, and as I've gotten older, I embrace it, right? But when you're younger, you kind of hide it because it's kind of nerdy, right? And so yeah, I we've been doing it for a really long time, and we do it in a way that's not jargony, right? Is that there's nothing worse that somebody's going to throw a bunch of big words at you that you don't understand, and then but I am, I don't consider now I definitely consider myself a nerd, but growing up, I tried to hide my nerd mentality. And so I would constantly try and pretend or try and word things differently. And so I've gotten very good at not using the jargons and the acronyms. So we try to present tech in a way that it's very easy to understand, and
Yeah.
it's all built around building up businesses.
Yeah.
That's the core really
Yeah.
of what it is helping a business find their processes, find their groove, and not get screwed over by the software applications that are out there and the world of tech that's constantly moving. I mean, technology is constantly innovating. It's constantly moving. It's surpassing legislation right now where, you know, it's evolving so quickly that legislation can't keep up.
Yeah.
And that's why you see Facebook and all these people getting sued and all this other stuff is because they can't keep up. The laws and the rules around it, you know, what happened 3 days ago could be irrelevant now. The things have changed. The update's already patched. What are you talking about? You know, so and so taking that mentality, that agile methodology is the word, is that's what it is in software. It's called agile methodology or continuous integration, continuous development, CI/CD. That's where Inovare, right? It's taking everything we've learned out of software innovation, tech, pushing out software updates. We've had this conversation before where we care more about the iPhone 12 and what update is coming out of it than we do about our own selves, our own health, right?
Yeah.
Have I taken all my vitamins today? Did I go for a run? Did I go for a walk? It doesn't even have to be a run. Did I get active? Or did I spend the whole time staring at a screen and wanting to know when the next software update is? When really ourselves and our body, our spirits and our soul that's the real important software. That's our most important operating system that we have within our lives. And if we don't take time to audit ourselves and to see where we can better ourselves and where we can, just get that little tweak. It doesn't have to be life-changing, just a little tweak. That next, 11.1 rollout, Roy 2.0, or Michael 3.0 or whatever it is. That's what we should be worried about. And so it's the merging of the two worlds. That's what Inovare is, and that's what we've really been looking forward to and into helping people with is that. Because I could build you software and that'd be really easy and that would be great. And that whole process is so, I think it's fun, but when you can take it out of software and put it into life, that's when that's when it really gets fun and you can really see the changes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's part of what kind of brought us together, is that mentality, and coming from it from, you're coming at it from a software and tech side and understanding those SOPs. And, I came at it from a artistic side, from the ballroom training and that I had, and from the personal development side. And I think that's probably why we were drawn to each other ultimately. It's like a cool matchup. I want to kick back for a second and talk a little bit about a few things that you had mentioned. You had mentioned a number of times through your journey where things weren't working out as most might seem. And I'm sure that in a number of those times, as with many of us, the money wasn't coming in, and during those times, how did you keep your emotions in check during those times and keep pushing through? Because obviously you're here now. And so like, what kind of things did you do to push through emotionally during those challenges?
Yeah. Well, you have to know that where you are now is not where you're going to be. And that doesn't matter if you're in a good or a bad place. Wherever you are today, right now, in this moment, is not where you're going to be. You are going to constantly be moving. The only constant in life is change. So something will always be changing. And so, so there's a story that I tell, and my wife will probably hate that I tell this a lot, and my wife hates that I tell it. But to me, it's my teaching moment. And so when I was working for in radio and I was working for the government, a lot of the stuff that I did in radio prior to making it, and I say that in quotation marks, with Sirius XM, it was self-funded. I had to drive to New York and sleep in cars to do reporting on the Sweet 16. They would give me the credentials, which was awesome, but I had to figure out where I was going to sleep. I got towed one year in New York. I had to become a New York citizen for a weekend so that I could get my car back. So it was not all unicorns and rainbows, right? It was a grind. And so during that process, I was broke for a number of years. And I don't mean broke as in like broke compared to like, I don't know, not like suburban America broke. I mean, like I lived like in, if you've ever seen The Wire, I lived in that neighborhood and was broke, like no money in my bank account. And so the story that I always tell is that I took a $5 loan from my son's piggy bank to buy pizza for the family one night because I had no money. Um, and so we got a hot and ready, was, shout out to Little Caesars. I took a loan from my son and went to go get a hot and ready pizza for the family. And I tell that story now and I've held on to it and it's meant so much to me because that has long been a turning point for me, is that's when you realize that, and that was really when I realized that everything that I had been doing to that point in my life was selfish. I was working the two jobs not to support my family. I was working the two jobs because I had believed in some reality in which radio was, and I was going to be a radio star. When there are times when hard work pays off, and there are times when hard work can be selfish. And so I was working towards, not because of the better of my family or because I thought that they would get better in some way, but I was doing it because I wanted something. And I believe that the universe knows when you're doing something for selfish reasons or if you're doing it because of the greater good. And so while I was going through the hard times, I have kept, that loan that my son gave me, which I've paid back, by the way. That was a good teaching point for me, and a time where I was able to reflect and I was able to say, I need to start doing things for other people. I need to move forward. And so now my wife and I have this saying when we're going through some crap, we always say, I can't wait to learn the lesson that this is going to teach us, because I would love to tell you that $5 loan or Crohn's disease at 12 or some of the other crazy stuff I've been through, I would love to tell you those are the only ones, but we've been through a lot and we will continue to go through a lot. Just like anyone listening to this, it's, our stories aren't unique. They're just unique to us. We all have struggle. We all have pain. It just comes in ways that are tests, and not only tests of, in a sense of if we're going to pass or not, they're tests of our endurance to see how much we can take on and to see how far we can push ourselves. And so long as you don't give up, then you'll move on and you'll learn a lesson, but you have to be open-minded to that lesson. Losing is a great teacher, unfortunately. And, but that's a big part of it. I've lost a lot more than I've won, but it was the lessons that I've gained from losing that help you move a little closer to the next victory.
Yeah, and no doubt that that all of those little bit of things that you learn along the way, they all kind of add up and end up being your stepping stones to get to the top.
Absolutely.
In that light, currently, maybe over the last 3 to 5 years, as you have continued to accelerate and find more and more success along the way, there's a lot going on in our heads. There's a lot of communication going on, and in often cases we see that communication outwardly is talked about a lot. Like, how do we communicate with other people? How do we speak to other people? How are we letting people know what we want and what we don't want? And yet at the same time, I find that more and more over the last maybe 10 or 15 years, people are starting to realize that how we communicate to ourselves is massively important. So I always say, like, what you focus on, you get, and the quality of our communication is literally the quality of our life. And so in your last 5 years, what kind of things do you find yourself saying to yourself on a regular basis that you do to keep your communication in check and heading you in the right direction?
Yeah. So you're right on there where I talk a lot, and I'm one of the more vocal um, people I know. I speak a lot, and I use humor as a coping mechanism. That's part of how I have been able to put up with so much of the crap that I've had in my life, is I turn to humor, and I speak a lot. Um, but there's nobody that I talk to more than myself. Even when I'm blabbering on, right? There's nobody that I talk to more than myself. And so through that, you do positive affirmations. And so you wake up in the morning and you wake up grateful. So my morning routine is a simple one, but it's one that I didn't learn until I was older. Um, and that's the importance of making your bed. So, and I don't mean that, make your bed so that when your mom comes in your room that it looks presentable, or when company is over, they don't have to shut your door, right? I don't mean make your bed in that sense, but if you wake up and you make your bed, then the first thing that you've done in the day is an accomplishment. So you've accomplished something immediately. You woke up, you made your bed, and now it doesn't matter what else happens throughout the day. You have that accomplishment to fall back on, because at the end of the day, you're going to come back to that bed and you're going to untuck it and you're going to remember that you accomplished something. So you could have had the worst day, and then when you come back, you say, "Oh yes, I did accomplish something today. I made this bed," and the thought process of making your bed builds momentum throughout the day as well. And so I'll make my bed, and then the next most important thing that I'll do is I'll walk into the bathroom and sure, brush your teeth, whatever, right? But I look into the mirror and you speak gratefulness, and you say, "Lord, thank you for waking me up. Thank you for this day. Thank you for whatever is in your world, whatever is in your life that day that you are grateful for." You don't have to sit there and have some long-winded speech. It doesn't have to be the next Gettysburg Address, but just speak a few words to yourself about how grateful you are to start your day out in a positive note. And I'll say there's one other time of the day, um, and that's the 1 o'clock. I call it the 1 o'clock feeling, where about 1 o'clock every day, which is about halfway through the day, and we were actually having this conversation um, before the call, where Wednesday is my panic day. And so maybe it's because it's the middle of the week, and maybe because 1 o'clock's the middle of the day and I just have these little mini panics. But at 1 o'clock every day, I have this freak out where I say, "Oh God, what did I do today? I didn't get anything accomplished. Oh my goodness, what have I done? You didn't get anything accomplished. You wasted the whole morning. Here you are. What are you doing?" That self-doubt starts to creep in around 1 o'clock. And so that's when I started writing things down. So I have a notebook here. And so every morning I write down 5 mission critical tasks that I have to get done for that day. And so I call those bricks. And so those bricks, it's because you can't build a mansion in a day. As much as we think we can get everything accomplished in the 8-hour workday, the 12 hours of light, or the 24 hours in a day, no matter how much we think that we can get accomplished in that time frame, it won't be a mansion, and we won't be done. So I have my 5 mission critical tasks that I do in a day. And by 1 o'clock, I usually have 2 or 3 of them done. And so I can open them up, and I've maybe scratched a couple of them off, which releases, parts of the brain of accomplishment. It's scientifically proven. Apparently, I had a neuroscientist on my show a while back, and so I had always thought that scratching them off just made me feel good. But he said that there's dopamine when you're physically scratching something off. There's dopamine that the body releases by physically scratching something off, and so that's why I don't do it on the computer anymore. Sure, I have an app that you can push a button and it'll ting and cross it out, but I still write them down because I want that dopamine. I want to feel good about myself for accomplishing that. And that 1 o'clock feeling is when I go back to my notebook and I look at my task and I say, "You know what? You got three things done right for your day. You're way ahead of schedule, man. You only got 2 things left. You only got 1 thing left. Look at you. You're crushing it." And so that's that self-talk, because everybody deals with self-doubt. That's part of life. It's overcoming the self-doubt and providing yourself with as much evidence as possible to combat that self-doubt. And it could be gratitude. For me, it's a list. My bricks are extremely important, and it's a large part of what I do, not only on a day-to-day basis, but I do review periods monthly, and I do bi-weekly reviews, and that's all part of my yearly goals, and it's a huge part of who I am and what I do.
That's huge. And keeping up with that, I think, is an area that many as entrepreneurs understand the challenge with. That's for sure.
Yeah.
It's definitely not easy, but it is imperative, and we would do the same for our business. We wouldn't not check in and make sure that we're hitting our KPIs. And it's just, that's a huge thing. I want to jump into what I call our speed round, and it's about emotions, and I call them our go-to emotions. And so I'll give you the category, and we'll talk about, I'll ask what your go-to emotion is when things are going well, and what your limiting emotion is when things are going poorly.
Man, okay.
So here's where you get to be authentic.
All right.
All right.
Let's do it.
All right. So first category up is business. So when
Okay.
things are going well in business, what's your go-to emotion?
My go-to emotion is I don't know, excitement, happy. I am when things are going well in business, you will be hard pressed to find somebody happier. I've been described as a dreamer, so it's definitely happiness.
Okay. And when things are going poorly, what's your limiting emotion?
My limiting emotion is fear. And I so oftentimes say fear is a liar. You'll see me if you follow me on social media, then you know that I post a lot about fear. My backstory of Crohn's disease is rooted in fear. And I speak so much on it, and I talk so much about fear because I know that's my limiting emotion. I'm really just talking to myself. Yeah, definitely fear of the unknown, fear of what's going to happen next. That's absolutely my limiting factor.
Okay. Next category, partnerships, business partnerships to be specific. When things are going well, what's your go-to emotion?
Man, that's a good question. My wife is my business partner, so this is a tough one, right?
Oh, because we're going to go to relationships next. So,
yeah.
We could combine them. How about that? Since it's kind of a dual. So, so partnership and relationship, that's a tough mix.
Yeah. So I will say at first when I was starting out, when things were going well in partnerships, my my go-to was always concern, which I was always worried about. What's the next step? What am I going to be doing next? How can we keep this going? That sort of thing. And I know that you're going to ask me what my limiting one in it probably is.
Yeah.
And I would say it's the exact same emotion. Concern to say, are we doing the right thing? Is my business partner going to screw me over? I definitely had moments like that. Now I obviously my wife's my business partner, but I have had multiple business partners in this same business venture. Ones we've had to buy out and so on and so forth. And so it's probably because I get concerned way too much. And that is that limiting belief sometimes that, I mean, there are other aspects of it, but I'll take the blame and say that, yeah, concern is a big one for that.
Okay. Next category, when you're coaching, because you do a lot of coaching with other people and groups. And when you're coaching and things are going well, what's your go-to?
Pride, probably. They teach you not to be prideful, right? That was something they taught us when we were little, right? Is like, don't talk about yourself. Don't show pride. Don't boast, don't brag. And how did that work out for some of our first interviews out of college, right? The first question, tell me about yourself. And you're like, well, I was told for the last 20 some years not to do that. So what do you mean? Yeah, probably pride. I mean, I have coached at a lot of different levels. I've coached other entrepreneurs. I've coached kids. I've coached high school varsity baseball. I've coached just about, I mean, you name it. I've coached it at that level. And there's nothing better than seeing somebody else succeed that you know that you've helped them out. And I like to be in the shadows with that. I love to see other people succeed. And I don't need like some big thank you to say, hey, thanks, coach, you know, or anything like that. But it's a great feeling. And as a father, I am way more prideful and excited when my kids do something cool than when I do something cool these days. You know, like I love to see their reaction. I love to see their emotions. So yeah, pride.
Cool. And limiting when things are going poorly.
Yeah, anger. I'm an angry guy sometimes. Um, I this is definitely something that I've always tried to work on. I've been working on this since I've been a little kid. I come from a military family. My grandfather was in the military, and my dad has that, uh, you know, mentality. Rub dirt on it, right? You know, there was no time for, you know, one of the famous movie lines that my dad always um, regurgitates is from the movie A League of Their Own, when I believe it's Tom Hanks is the
Yeah.
coach,
Tom
and he
Hanks.
says, crying. There's no crying in baseball. And so that became a thing around my house growing up, was that if anything went wrong, then how dare you show emotion, you know? Crying, there's no crying. What do you do? And so he would quote that movie a lot at us. I'm sure it was funny to him as a kid. I didn't think it was funny. But I get it now. And so that anger and that, you know, be a man, don't show your emotions. So when things are going wrong and I'm trying to coach somebody and they're not listening and things aren't going wrong, it's that thought process of, why aren't you listening to me? Why aren't you be a man or stand up or do this or do that? And it's to a fault. You know, I know that that's something that I have to work on, and I feel like I've gotten much better at it as I've aged and as my children have grown up. And I have 4 children now, and my 10-year-old has definitely got the worst of it, whereas my 5-year-old probably doesn't know that dad is a mean coach sometimes, because I feel like I've done a much better job of dealing with and trying to make things fun, whereas before it was, well, I could do it at your age, and now it's, hey, let's try to figure out how the way you learn, because you're actually not me. So yeah, anger.
Okay. Speaking of your kids, that's
Mhm.
the next category. When things are going well with your
Mhm.
kids, what's your go-to emotion?
Oh man, when things are going well with my kids, my go-to emotion, I mean, it would be, you know, pride or excitement. I love when things are going well with my kids, and my favorite time of the year is Christmas. Um, I am Santa and we're really close, and he comes to our house and just, you know, he does it up.
I love it.
And I love the excitement. I love to see the excitement of my children, and that's what gets me excited. So yeah, I'm just boastful whenever my kids are excited. So, and I do anything possible to see them, you know, get that Santa, that Christmas morning laugh and smile. That's, yeah,
Nice.
definitely.
And when things are going poorly, what's your limit? You knew it was coming.
Yeah, I know. Oh man. I mean, I have a really bad temperament. I mean, it'd be anger or frustration. Um, you know, and I'm not, you know, I'm not proud of those at all. It's not something that I say um light, you know. I don't think that as fathers, you know, as fathers we're taught to not show emotion, right? Like a dad is, oh, how do dad said he loves you? What is that? You know, and like that's the household that I grew up in. And so nowadays my dad, you know, my dad and I, we hug and say I love you and stuff like that. But I feel like between the ages of 9, 8, and 18, it was a very different relationship with my dad than it was when I was really young and when now. Nowadays with my dad, it's, we hug and I love you and everything like that. And during those other 8 to 18, it was like a dictatorship, And so, I feel like as fathers, that's the household that I grew up in. So it was like, hide your emotions, don't let your emotions drive you. And I try to hug my kids a lot more than I'm comfortable with, because of where I grew up, But yeah, I would say frustration is probably my biggest weakness, is that, and it comes from lack of showing emotions. Really what it is when you bottle up your emotions, especially around your children, because dad's superhero, right? And so how dare he be vulnerable? I would say frustration, and it's built up around though not really knowing how to speak about or show my emotions properly.
Yeah. Well, that's the last category. So you did
good,
it,
man. Those are tough.
Hey, it just wouldn't be any fun if we didn't give you a chance to tell all about the things that you're up to and how people can find you, and just any projects you're working on now that we can share with the audience and let them know what you're up to these days.
Yeah, so I definitely know the answers to those. Those are
those are easy.
Yeah. So you can reach me at innovarepodcast.com. And so Innovare is no, it's not N. It starts with I. INOVARE podcast.com. Innovarepodcast.com. And so then you'll see links to like our Facebook group and a contact form. And so you can get in touch with me there. I'm very active on both LinkedIn and Instagram. So Roy G. Edwards is my Instagram. And LinkedIn, I honestly don't know what my LinkedIn handle is, but just search for Roy Edwards and hopefully I show up. I don't know. But yeah, that's how you can get in touch with me. I would start at innovarepodcast.com. I think that's kind of the catch-all. You'll find all my handles, all my information there, and there's a contact form that you can fill out. We can get in touch. And if that business stuff that you were talking about is something that, you're interested in, you want to audit, and we just want to have a conversation about business processes, let's have a conversation, no cost, no, I won't, pressure you into buying anything or anything crazy like that. But go to capitalpresence.com, CAPITO. like the Capitol building, capitalpresence.com, and book a demo with me and let's have a talk.
Awesome. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I sure appreciate all your knowledge and your journey and being willing to share all of that with us and be so authentic. So we appreciate you, and really enjoyed having you on the podcast today. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for everything you're doing. You are a very what you're doing is just so cool, and I hope your listeners really appreciate everything you're doing, because it makes a world of difference in people's lives. And I will say that you were a guest on my show, and I've listened to that episode more than probably any other episode that I've recorded. I've gone back and listened to it multiple times just because every time I listen to it, I get a new little nugget out of your story and who you are, and I appreciate it.
Well, thanks. I appreciate you. And make sure you guys go check out his websites. We'll put all the links below, and we'll see you next time on the Magic for Life podcast. Hey, lifers, don't forget to get your free copy of the Every Minute book. You can find it at everyminutebook.com. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram.